DKIM, DMARC, and SEO. Email credibility in 2025. Email credibility is now a revenue prerequisite. If your outbound performance dropped sharply in 2024 or 2025, the root cause often isn't messaging, it's credibility. Gmail and Yahoo tighten sender requirements, and once a domain gets labeled risky, inbox placement can collapse without obvious errors. For B2B teams running outbound at SDR scale, authentication and complaint rates now sit upstream of reply rates, meetings, and pipeline. The timing is brutal because email still works when it's trusted. Marketing and sales teams continue to see roughly $36 returned for every $1 invested, and global volume is massive at around 376 billion emails sent and received per day. That combination, high ROI plus huge volume, is exactly why inbox providers are aggressively filtering anything that looks even slightly like abuse. This is where DKIM, DMARC, and SPF stop being IT checkboxes and become operational infrastructure for any sales outsourcing motion, outsourced sales team, or in-house SDR org. When credibility is healthy, cold email behaves like a predictable channel. When it's not, your sequences get throttled, your links get distrusted, and your brand takes a hit that can spill into other channels over time. What Gmail and Yahoo are really measuring in 2025. Mailbox providers are asking 3 practical questions. Did this sender authenticate? Do recipients consistently engage? And are people complaining? For bulk senders, Gmail and Yahoo expect SPF and DKIM to be in place, a DMARC record to be published, and list hygiene plus unsub flows to be strong enough that spam complaints stay below about 0.1% and never touch 0.3%. That tiny threshold matters because it turns deliverability into a math problem, not a vibes problem. One bad segment can poison a whole week of outreach. The crackdown is driven by risk, not preference. Nearly half of global email traffic has been classified as spam, about 45.6% in 2023, and business email compromise has produced more than $55.4 billion in exposed losses reported over the past decade. From a provider's perspective, unauthenticated outbound and high complaint rates resemble the same patterns used for spoofing and fraud, even if your intent is legitimate. To ground this in performance, here's what healthy tends to look like when infrastructure and targeting are solid. If you're far below these ranges, it's often a deliverability issue first and a copy issue second, especially for a cold email agency or SDR agency trying to scale volume safely. SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, translated for sales leaders. Think of SPF as who is allowed to send, DKIM as prove this message wasn't altered, and DMARC as enforce and report on the rules. SPF publishes which servers and vendors can send on your behalf, which matters when your stack includes a CRM, sales engagement platform, billing tool, support desk, and marketing automation. If SPF is missing, overly permissive, or misconfigured, you're effectively telling inbox providers you don't control your own identity. DKIM is the credibility stamp for each message. It cryptographically signs outgoing mail so the receiver can validate the signature against a public key in DNS. If the message is forged or tampered with, DKIM fails. In practice, DKIM failures are a silent killer for outbound sales because your SDRs don't see an error. Results just degrade as inboxes quietly divert mail to spam or reject it. DMARC is where strategy shows up. It requires alignment, the from domain must match what authenticated, and it gives you a policy dial, monitor only, quarantine, or reject. Adoption is still uneven. One report found only 7.7% of top domains enforce DMARC at the strictest level, which leaves a huge surface area for spoofing and brand impersonation. For a B2B sales agency or outbound sales agency, that gap is both a threat and an opportunity. Teams who enforce DMARC and keep complaints low look materially more trustworthy to providers. Implementing credibility like revenue infrastructure. The fastest way to make this manageable is to treat deliverability the way you treat CRM uptime: measurable, monitored, and owned. We recommend a simple weekly dashboard that includes DMARC policy status, spam complaint rate by sending domain, and inbox versus spam placement for your highest volume sequences. When leaders see credibility metrics next to pipeline metrics, the org stops losing meetings to invisible technical debt. Start with an audit that's broader than most teams expect. List every system that sends email as your brand: marketing, SDR tools, billing, product alerts, support, and any old vendors. And confirm SPF and DKIM are correct for each, with DMARC alignment in place. Many random deliverability drops are actually caused by one forgotten sender or a new tool launched without authentication, which then drags down reputation for the whole domain family. Then move DMARC from visibility to enforcement in controlled steps. Begin with monitoring, fix legitimate senders, and ratchet policy upward while watching for unintended failures. The goal is to end at quarantine or reject for core domains that represent your brand. A staged rollout reduces risk while still getting you to a posture that modern providers interpret as serious and well-governed. When authentication breaks, your SDRs don't lose a few emails, they lose momentum, meetings, and revenue to filters you can't see. Domain strategy that protects deliverability, brand, and SEO. One of the most expensive mistakes we still see is blasting high-volume cold outreach from the same domain that hosts the corporate website. If that domain's reputation gets hit through complaints, poor list quality, or spoofing, you don't just hurt Outbound, you can disrupt customer communications and create long-term trust issues around your brand. For teams evaluating a cold calling agency, cold calling services, or a combined outbound program, domain strategy is a core part of brand protection. A safer approach is to separate concerns. Keep your primary domain pristine for customers, partners, and content, and run outreach through well-branded secondary domains or subdomains that are fully authenticated and warmed gradually. This lets your SDR agency scale volume while containing risk, and it prevents a single campaign mistake from spilling into your main brand identity. Done correctly, prospects still recognize you, but inbox providers can evaluate outreach traffic patterns independently from lifecycle email. This is also where SEO benefits show up indirectly. Email itself isn't a ranking factor, but a credible program increases the odds that prospects read, click, and share your content, which can drive branded search, repeat visits, and backlinks over time. When outbound emails lead with value-dense resources instead of pure pitches, you're not just improving reply rates, you're fueling the behaviors that strengthen domain authority in the background. Operate spam complaints like a core SDR KPI. In 2025, spam complaint rate belongs in SDR coaching alongside reply rate and meetings booked. Providers have effectively set a tolerance ceiling around 0.1%, and crossing 0.3% can trigger aggressive filtering or rejection, even if your copy is reasonable. The operational implication is simple. Volume is no longer the primary lever. Precision is. Complaint control is mostly a targeting and relevance problem, not a technical trick. Tight ICP filters, verified B2B list building services, and fast opt-out handling reduce negative signals before they happen, and they also improve conversion rates. If your team is scaling pay-per-appointment lead generation, this is the difference between predictable throughput and sudden deliverability cliffs. Guardrails make it sustainable. Track complaints by domain and sequence, throttle volume when a campaign trends upward, and fix the root cause before you push through with more sins. At SalesHive, we treat these controls as part of the outbound system, because the goal isn't to send more emails, it's to get more qualified conversations without damaging brand trust. Common failure modes and how to fix them quickly. The most common technical failure is incomplete alignment. SPF passes for one vendor, DKIM passes for another, but the from domain doesn't align consistently, so DMARC still fails and placement degrades. Another recurring issue is SPF sprawl. Too many includes, outdated senders, or overly broad permissions, making it harder for providers to trust that you control your domain. These problems often appear right after teams add new tools or switch outbound platforms. The most common operational failure is list-driven volume that outpaces reputation. Teams ramp new domains too fast, chase scale with generic messaging, or let opt-outs lag behind sends, and complaint rates spike above safe thresholds. When that happens, the right move is to slow down, tighten segments, and rebuild trust. Because once a domain is flagged, every future test becomes harder to interpret. The most common strategic failure is mixing brand-critical traffic with experimentation. Proposals, invoices, customer success check-ins, and marketing newsletters should not share the same deliverability fate as aggressive prospecting tests. If you're going to outsource sales or hire SDRs through an SDR agency, insist on a clear domain plan, a documented authentication setup, and ongoing monitoring as part of the engagement, not as an afterthought. Advanced trust signals, BIMI, testing, and brand lift. Once DMARC enforcement is stable, BIMI is one of the cleanest trust upgrades available. It can display your logo in supported inboxes, reinforcing legitimacy at the moment of decision. The practical benefit is attention and confidence in crowded executive inboxes, which is why it pairs well with high-stakes outbound from a sales development agency. The technical prerequisite is real, though. BIMI is built on the foundation of strong DMARC, not a substitute for it. Testing should be continuous, not reactive. Inbox placement varies by provider, message type, and segment, so teams should run recurring placement checks, rotate templates carefully, and watch for sudden shifts that indicate reputation damage. This is especially important when you're running multi-channel outbound. Cold email plus LinkedIn outreach services plus B2B cold calling, because the email channel often influences how prospects perceive every other touch. To connect this back to SEO without overpromising, focus on measurable downstream signals, increases in branded search, content engagement, and earned links after you improve email credibility. When the right people trust your outreach, they're more likely to Google your brand, share your resources internally, and reference your content externally. That compounding effect is how credibility supports discoverability over time. What to do next? A 2025 playbook for scalable outbound. If you want a practical starting line, do 3 things in order. Inventory all senders, validate SPF DKIM alignment everywhere, and publish DMARC with reporting so you can see what's really happening. Then, build a domain strategy that separates core brand traffic from outreach and warm new sending identities gradually before you scale. This is the lowest risk path to higher inbox placement and more stable pipeline performance. From there, operationalize the metrics. Put spam complaints, unsubscribes, and inbox placement into your weekly sales ops rhythm the same way you track conversion rates and meeting volume. Teams that do this outperform because they don't waste weeks fixing copy when the real issue is that providers stop trusting them. This is also the intersection where we operate every day at SalesHive. High-volume outbound with strict deliverability rules and brand constraints. Whether you're evaluating a B2B sales agency, comparing cold calling companies, or expanding sales outsourcing, make email credibility part of the decision criteria. Because in 2025, the best messaging in the world can't convert if it never reaches a human inbox.